Hey, so I'm making this video on what happens when you die. And I came about this subject because, first of all, after studying what will happen after you die, it has made me reflect a lot on my life and make me realize some of the things that I've done that are good and some of the things that I've done that are bad. And so, you know, it helps you to dig deeper and understand what God accepts as righteous and unrighteous, what are purity and what is impure, and things of that nature. So I wanted to record this video to help give a little bit more information to people who are unsure what will happen after you die, and to make sure that you're making good choices while you're on earth, so when you do pass, you won't have anything to fear about where you will end up. Okay, so the first myth or the first type of misconception of where you might end up when you die is probably just in the grave. A lot of people think that when you die, after they bury you, that's the end of it, but that's not 100% true. So if you think about biblical terms in Luke chapter 16 verses 19 through 31, so this is from the Amplified version, and it talks about the story between Lazarus and the rich man. And so this is a story or a parable that Jesus told, and he was trying to teach people about how to get into heaven and the choices that people should make. And so he gave this example. So I have my phone, my Bible app right here. So man, in Luke chapter 16 verses 19 through 31, and so I'm going to read it and then try to break it down as best as I can. So starting at verse 19, it says, "Now there was a certain rich man who was habitually dressed in expensive purple and fine linen, and celebrated and lived joyous in splendor every day. And a poor man named Lazarus was laid at his gate, covered with sores. He eagerly longed to eat the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Besides, even the dogs were coming and licking his sores. Now it happened that the poor man died, and his spirit was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom, paradise." So I'm using the Bible app right now. That's what I'm reading off of. And there's a text bubble right next to where it says Abraham. And if you click on the text bubble, it'll tell you what the Abraham's bosom is. Normally, if you hear the phrase Abraham, or if you hear the phrase bosom, you think it's like a breast. But here, he's not talking about it. Jesus isn't talking about Abraham's breast. He's talking about he wrapped up Lazarus in his robe as he carried him off into heaven. In my inference or my assumption is that maybe he was carrying Lazarus that way because he was so malnourished. I'll continue reading. "And the rich man had also died and was buried." So we move on to verse 23. "In Hades, the realm of the dead," that's very important. So it says Hades, a realm of dead, not just of hell, because we know that when people die now, just from reading this verse in Luke, we know when people die, they don't just lay in the grave, they are actually carried off somewhere. And this is an example. In Hades, the realm of the dead, being tormented. So here we have the rich man who was very spoiled and rich and didn't share his riches with the poor, with Lazarus, who was like literally outside of his gate. Like if you think about it, if you live in a nice house and you have a nice car, but you continuously every day on the way to work, maybe you see homeless people on the side of the road and you don't do anything to help them, then you're kind of like walking in the rich man's shoes, where you're not acting like Christ. Here he is in the hell part of Hades, being tormented, while Lazarus, on the other hand, is being carried up by Abraham up into heaven. So he looked up and saw Abraham far away and Lazarus in his bosom, paradise. And he cried out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus so that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in severe agony in this flame." But Abraham said, "Son, remember that this is your that in your lifetime you receive your good things, all the comforts and delights. And Lazarus likewise bad things, all the discomforts and distress. But now he is comforted here in paradise while you are in severe agony. Now we know that people who are passed away, they aren't just laying in the dirt. They either are in the hell part of Hades or they're in the heavenly part of Hades. And so both places are only temporary. They won't be in either place for eternity. They still have to go through judgment. So I guess that's another myth, that you get judged right away, but judgment doesn't come until the second coming and resurrection. So anyway, okay, so that leads us to our next belief, which is the final destination after we die will be in an intermittent heaven, right? So people believe that when you die, you go to heaven, you're staying in heaven, and that you're just gonna be there for the rest of your life. But kind of like what I just said earlier, is that is kind of not true at all. So the intermittent heaven, which is the place your soul goes once you die if you're a believer, is not the ultimate destination for believers. And scripture proves, it says in 2 Peter's chapter 3 and 13. Alright, so in 2 Peter's chapter 3 and 13, it says, "But in accordance with his promise, we expectantly wait new heavens and new earths in which righteousness dwells." So he's saying that we're waiting on a new earth, and we can only get the new earth when Jesus comes on his second coming. And once he comes, then he'll be able to resurrect his believers. And so for the unbeliever, it says Jesus warned that people should fear God who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So that's in Matthew 10:28. And based on all of the scripture that I just read out to you, you can now tell that if you make unrighteous choices and you make bad decisions on earth, then you will end up in hell, and you will experience extreme suffering. And that's only for the unbeliever. It says, present time, all people receive God's grace, including food, air, sunshine, blessing, and relationships. So God has grace on your life. Even though you might be a sinner, you haven't repented, you're an unbeliever, God still has grace on you. It says, Paul warns in Romans 2 and 5, experience God blessings while giving him honor increases God's wrath, for the unbelievers who die will experience eternal death with no escape. So the unbeliever's faith is sealed once they die. They won't get a second chance. And it says in Proverbs 11 and 7, when the wicked dies, his hope will perish. So if you die and you are an unbeliever, your chances of getting into heaven are zero. You have no other opportunity to try to prove your righteousness or prove your belief to God, except for when you're on earth. So that's why my friend was saying he feels bad for people when they family members pass away and he's not sure they were saved or not, because they'll end up in hell. So believers, if you're a believer, there's no reason for you to fear about dying, because ultimately you're going to be in a better place than here on earth. Earth is full of sin right now. You would rather be up in intermittent heaven and down back on the new earth when Jesus comes. So it says death is a result of sin. And if you think about Adam and Eve, I've already mentioned it earlier, but Adam and Eve were tempted by the serpent or Satan to eat from the tree that God had commanded them not to eat from. And since that day, sin has been on earth. But Christians are forgiven of all sins because of Jesus Christ, and it says so in Romans 8 and 1. Christians should not fear death because Jesus Christ has conquered it. Romans 8 and 38 through 39, it says nothing can separate you from the love of Christ. And so the only way that you can enter the intermediate heaven is if you have given your life to Christ, you've repented, and that you're living in purity, you're following the commandments of God the best way as you can, and you're helping others, and you're living a non-selfish life. But other than that, Paul the Apostle Paul even said that he would rather be in heaven with Christ than on earth. So you shouldn't be trying to live for earth, your rest of life on earth. You should be preparing yourself for heaven. And so that means, you know, do good to others. If someone needs extra money and you have the money, you should give it. Volunteering, making sure that you're repenting whenever you do something bad, trying your best not to do anything bad. So, you know, treating your body like a temple, you know, having godly thoughts and things of that nature. So in the end of everything, it says, now that you have some perspective on what will happen after death, what side of the spectrum do you want to end up on? Do you want to end up on the side of the intermittent hell, or do you want to end up on the side of the intermittent heaven? Okay, and also I want to let you know that I got most of my information for this lesson from this book, and I also got it from this book and this book. It's a Bible, and on my Bible app. So if you like to challenge anything that I said, that I'm 100% open-minded to learning more if I said something wrong. But if you really like my videos, then I would also just suggest that you like and comment and subscribe, and have a blessed day.